Okay, can I just say, so I'm here with my sister, Kayla, and we're at our grandmother's house because I'm up here in Buffalo helping take care of my grandmother because she's recovering from a broken hip. And she keeps her house at 75 degrees. I can't even begin to tell you. Like, I'm just constantly sweating, constantly. And outside, it's like negative 1,000. It's just like nobody can survive. And then it's like a desert in here. It's so hot. But anyway, hi.
That actually sounds so nice to me. I love being hot.
But it's dry hot. It's like a sauna. My lips are so chapped. I'm going to make it sound very not appealing, and it smells like cats. So it's like a hot, dry cat sauna. It's not nice.
Okay. Well, I feel like we should do a little introductions because there's a new voice. So real quick, I'm Sarah.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Kayla.
Yeah. We're so glad. Our very first guest on Inner Archaeology, and I'm so excited it's you, Kayla. And do you want to tell us like a little bit about you, a little bit about who you are and what you're about?
Yeah. So I'm Kayla, Emily's younger sister by 1 year. Mm-hmm. Live here in New York State. I work as a zoologist, which is really exciting. Been in the field for about 15 years. Seems like it's only been like 2 years, but 15 years. I live on a little farm with my husband and my 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. So I'm busy for sure with that. But I'm happy to be your first guest speaker. Yeah. Super exciting.
Wait, I have to just real quick say, first of all, I'm so excited you're here. But also, I had a huge part of my life where I swore I was going to be a zoologist. And every time Emily tells me about like what you do, I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. I love it. I love that you do that so much. I think
everyone did.
We do.
And I just was like, I'm so stubborn. I'm going to do this. So I decided in first grade that that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, that's all I'm going to do. That's all. And I did it. And I think a lot of people grow out of that. Like it is kind of like a field that people do when they're like younger and they can just do it voluntarily or whatever. But for me, it turned into a career, and I feel very lucky that I am able to do that as a career. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. You're like one of the kids who had like the dream like occupation, but you like actually followed through. Like the people who went on to be like astronauts, you know? You're like, who are those people? You like actually did the thing we all wanted to do. I love it. Anyway, I've always like just have loved that about you. So from afar. So it's also my first time meeting Kayla, which is like kind of crazy. Hi.
Crazy.
That we're doing this on a podcast live as we go.
So it's a little bit of a get to know ya.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking a lot about parenting. And I am not a parent, so I'm going to be asking lots of questions. And I don't know if you have something like on your mind, Emily, that you kind of wanted to get started with, but.
Well, because you and I, Sarah, have talked about doing an episode about like conscious parenting. Mm-hmm. And I remember having the thought of like, oh, I would love to have Kayla on this episode because Kayla has 2 young boys. My girls are a bit older. And it's so interesting because, you know, Kayla and I had similar childhoods, but we both kind of came out of that with this value around really conscious parenting, which my definition, I guess, my loose definition of that is having awareness of yourself and the emotions that you're experiencing, the things, the triggers that are kicking you up, and not passing your bullshit onto your kids, but instead actually being able to see your child and meet their needs. Because there's so much of parenting, I think, that is just reacting. Like you're just reacting, you're getting triggered, you're reacting. And that can just happen in this like endless cycle, especially around like discipline and around like maybe more of the negative, like difficult aspects of parenting, but to bring conscious awareness into parenting and asking yourself why am I doing what I'm doing? What's the emotional like baggage? What is behind the energy here and how I'm interacting with my kids? And it's interesting because the last podcast that Sarah and I recorded, we were talking about how in relationship we constantly make bids for attention, right? And we touched on how when you make a bid, your response is either one of four things. It's a active positive, right? Really engaging, seeing them meeting their needs, which is where we want to be, where we want to parent from. It can be active passive, which is, not as great. And then it can be
active positive, active negative, passive positive, passive negative.
There it is. That's hard for me to do those in my brain.
It's like a little like square in my brain.
I know it's a square in my brain of just like imaginary writing. I can't figure it out.
But we got it. We're following.
Right. You got it. You were trying.
Yeah.
So Sarah and I talked about this in our last podcast, and I think it's really applicable to what we're wanting to talk about conscious parenting, because parenting is literally just an onslaught of bids from your kid, and then you get to decide how am I meeting that need and how I'm responding. Right. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts like off the get-go?
I mean, it definitely is a whirlwind, parenting, and it's something for me that I always thought would be like a natural thing. Like,
yeah,
I've always wanted kids, and this is going to be like so easy. I'm just going to know how to do it. And none of it comes easy. None of it comes naturally for me. And I think a lot of it though too is like, it's been the last 5 years or so where I'm really becoming aware of my own self. And so trying to parent in your own healing has been like, it's been like a crazy thing. And I love it. Also feel a ton of mom guilt over it, because I'm like, I should have worked this shit out like long time ago. But like trying to parent through that and doing the best that you can. It's like each day I go to bed at night and I was like, I really fucked up in this aspect, but like I learned from that and I'm not going to do it again. And tomorrow I'll be better. Like it's kind of like a game I do with myself of like the next day is going to be better and it's going to be better than the next day.
And
growing with it, because these little children I have never loved anything more in my life than my 2 kids. And so for me, like I cannot fail them. I cannot fail them in any aspect, and I can't do anything that's going to be detrimental in their growing. So it definitely has been like, I have to be, my brain's just like working all the time. Like, how do I respond to this? Take a deep breath, Kayla. Like, it's all going to be fine. We're going to figure out this tantrum. We're going to figure out this. And the toddlers, like literally, I love them. The terrible twos is like a horrible saying, because like 2-year-olds are the
2-year-olds
best.
are sweet. I thought it was the terrible
best.
3s more like, but they're still the best.
3-year-olds are the best. And I think when you can like see them in a place of like just being the best little humans that I created, that you can really just hone in and try to do the best you can for them. But it is.
Wait, I have a question.
It is exhausting.
It's the hardest, most exhausting thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like there's an easy route I could definitely take, but I'm not. I'm going to take the hard route of doing it right. And it's like rewriting the book.
Yeah. Wait, I have questions. First of all, I'm so curious because I wonder this, because Emily often says this to me where she's like, I'm excited for you to have kids. And like one thing she talks about is me being like older when I had kids than when she had them, because she often says, when I was like first having kids and I was young, like early 20s, I'm speaking on behalf of Emily right now, and obviously you can chime in.
You know it.
She often talks about how, like me starting when I'm older, I'll have more tools and more self-awareness and stuff like that. But I actually I'm super interested because I just wonder if there's like growth that happens from learning from your kids, because there's such like reflections of you that like is impossible to have without that experience. You know what I mean? Because I heard you say like something similar to Emily is like having to kind of figure your own shit out with these small humans present and feeling like, God, I wish I did that sooner. But I just kind of have always suspected that like, that's almost like an impossibility,
I think
like
so.
it's like
I totally think so.
Through parenting, certain growth. I think certain growth and healing does happen through parenting
that you wouldn't have any other way.
That you can't ever figure out. You're never going to have your entire. Oh, this is what I kind of like always think about it is your kids will ask you to be better than you ever thought you could be. Like more selfless, more patient, more kind, more loving than you ever thought was possible. Because I mean, I don't know how many times I get where I'm like, this is the end. I have I have no more left to give. And then you find more. You find more to give. And you're like, wow, like I dug so deep and and it almost feels like that well is kind of like endless. Of course, that's not to say there are mom boundaries, I think, are like an important thing to have, you know, but yeah, I think that healing through parenting is a very unique thing. And there is very unique things that you discover about yourself when you're consciously moving through parenting like that, you know? And I know for both Kayla and I, we lost our mother before you had your eldest, and mine were little. Mine were like 2 and 4. That I think that launched, or I'm curious what you would say, but for me, it definitely launched me into like, who am I as a mother without my mother here? And it was this deep exploration of like really looking at how I was mothered and how I want to mother. But I really do feel like mom's death was like a catalyst for that growth for me in a big way. It was incredibly painful, but I think ultimately it was like really like enlightening and it caused me to grow in a way that I wasn't otherwise growing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, Emily, I then like went to you as my mom when mom died.
Yeah.
And that was just like, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I would call you. I'm like, my baby's not burping. And I don't know. It hasn't pooped in days. What's happening? Is this normal? And I just didn't know. And then I do feel like not having my mom around gave me the freedom to do it my way.
Oh, interesting.
And it breaks my heart to say that because I want her here and my kids deserve to have that grandma and they don't. But I think it's allowed me to have the freedom to parent in the way that I think is best for my kids. That's not necessarily what my mom did. It would have been tricky having the boundaries I would have needed to have if she was still here.
I mean, you're not wrong. Cause like, I mean, like I got to experience grandma, you know, for the first few years. And that was a huge part of it was there were just like, and even silly things like she would constantly feed them like Smarties and candy. And I just have to be like, Mom, like my kids are going to like, they're like,
cavities.
Like have like little baby cavities, you know, but it was just, but it did get me to, I don't know, it was interesting to witness her as grandma, but I see what you're saying. Like there is, especially with the parents and even I would say like the in-law parents, there can be pressure put on you as a parent to replicate what their values were. And that's a very tricky thing to navigate relationally when you have different values. You know what I mean? Totally. And
yeah, I feel like it's interesting because it was only in the last actually, you know what? It was through my friendship with Emily where I kind of realized how many like flavors of parenting there are. You know what I mean? Because like you grow up, you experience how you were parented. That's it. Like that's the only experience you have. And I don't know. I kind of like move throughout the world thinking that's like what a parent like child relationship looks like.
Right.
Boom. Like that's it. Right. And then through like my friends having parents and then especially like having these conversations with Emily, I just was like, my eyes opened to the fact that there was like even like other possibilities. And to me, it's kind of reassuring, but also it's kind of amazing to me because I don't think most people kind of like move throughout their like moms, even like me as a non-mom looking at like mom culture is so judgy. And so like I have like made a promise to myself. We'll see if I can keep it. To never say to anyone that they don't know what they're talking about because they're not a mom. Because I have had so many people say that to me. And I'm just like, I just feel like actually what's happening here is that there's so many different ways to parent. And whereas there's like kind of like almost like a lack of like respect is like what I observe. Not that like, I don't know. It's just so interesting to me that you had like a moment where you could like make a choice to do something different. And then what did it like even look like for you to like start assembling? Because like how do you assemble like what to do when it's not what you want? Like when you don't want to replicate what was modeled for you.
Ooh,
do you know what I mean?
That's a good question.
Like what do you do next? Like
Well, a big thing for me, and this was part of the healing process, is that I think I started giving to my daughters what I wish I had from my mom, which had really nothing to do with my girls. It had everything to do with me. But that, and for me, it looked like, I know Sarah and I have joked about it, me packing them beautiful berries for lunch, or me giving them individualized attention where I was just sitting and going on a date with one of them, and then taking the other one on a date. But I immediately started it was almost like me mothering my daughters was healing my little inner child that wanted that attention or wanted to feel spoiled or special in that way. And I think that's kind of how I started assembling what my values were. But then really ultimately it's just getting to know your kid, right?
And trial and error.
Right.
Think you try
that
some
work.
things. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, that felt bad, or that didn't get
sit
the reaction.
Well with me.
Yeah. And we're just not doing that again. So we're going to try something else the next time.
Inner voice, the intuition too, is huge. Well, and even the birthing process, really is so much about listening to your body and experiencing what your body is telling you, and red flags or this or that. And there is an intuitive, it's interesting because something you brought up, Sarah, just then is where when you said that people, you don't know how many times people have told you, you don't know because you're not a mom. I really want to push back on that, because I don't think being a mom and having wisdom there just comes from a little human exiting your body. I really think that's a big part of it, but I think there's a mother energy. Oh, it's totally. It's a certain type of energy that you can have if you're not a mom. You can have if you're not a woman. It's the mother energy is this nurturing, enveloping love, this safety, this, and Sarah, you are a person that I know to have that energy, to have that care for. So I really do believe you have wisdom around mother energy that is valid, regardless of whether or not you have small, offsprings, And, so I think pushing back on that whole, judgy idea of somebody does or does not have permission to speak on a topic because of, I think that's
the thing is it's not even necessarily about parenting, but it is it's just, I think that was because it's even said just about your views on life. You know what I mean? You don't get it. You kind of are just don't understand.
In the dark.
Even because you're not. And it doesn't, I don't know. I just think that from an outsider, from somebody who's not a mom yet, looking at the way moms interact, at least mostly online, right? And among my friends, I just see a ton of judgment and unkindness. And I'm
honestly,
it's so sad
I think
to
it's
me.
because they're so tired. At
Yeah.
the end of the day,
delusional.
No, to be honest though, look at the expectations they put on moms of do this, birthday party, get them to school, have all the things,
Pinterest-worthy lunches.
Oh, but still go to work. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, there's many days where I'm just I'm so angry. I'm just so angry because I cannot believe this is what our society puts on us. It's 2022. How are we still doing this? How are still both parents working, and you got to get your kids to school, but then do the hockey practice and all the things, or get them to daycare, and
you have to look cute.
Oh, look good.
You have to look good.
Oh my gosh.
And you have to be thin, and you can't.
And your kids, make sure they have their hair brushed and all pressure, the things that I feel mothers are on the verge of going psycho because we're so freaking tired. And we all need a vacation by ourselves for 24 hours, every couple weeks.
Yes.
To
so
be honest, because I think you sway then from being your best self to then just being an ugly person because you're tired, but it's this thing. It's the same with kids. It's when you look at how their behaviors are, you have to check off. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you overstimulated? Mothers are all of those all the time.
Hungry, overtired, and overstimulated.
Tired, and overstimulated. And so trying to pull out your best self when oftentimes we deny our own needs because that's just what we've been taught, which isn't healthy.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of the mom judge happens.
Comes from that place of exhaustion.
Comes from that place of exhaustion, and not like, if we were told every day, like, oh my gosh, you're doing awesome. This is like an unattainable thing that you're doing, like raising these 2 kids while still going to work and trying to sleep at night and feeding yourself, making sure you're hydrated and all the things. Like, I don't know. It's like, we're like superheroes.
Yeah, you really are.
We're superheroes. And so the judgy, I think, comes from that.
Yeah.
When we're just tired.
It's like a protector, really.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like to like protect the fact that you're trying your damnedest, right? You're just like casting judgments on other people I feel like as a way to like maybe protect your own decisions and your own good and bad decisions.
I do feel like I would say the worst thing I could think of, like the worst criticism I think I could think of, it would be for somebody to tell me I'm a bad mom. Like, I feel like that would be, you could literally criticize anything else.
Totally.
But like, that is, because I do think it is the judgment, the judgy mom culture. Like, there's a reason that exists, I think, because I think it's literally the most tender, sensitive. It goes like straight to your like core of who you are as a person. How like how you parent your children reflects that. And I think that for some women, if they perceive that coming under any kind of like criticism, the backlash is like huge. And I remember, I remember just like, I wasn't walking around. I remember just the fact that I had my daughters and then I was like back to my normal size, like pretty quickly. Just the fact that my body did that, what got like created a reaction from other moms because their bodies were having a different experience. And then they felt like bad about their bodies. And then I was receiving judgment and like sarcasm and like just snippy, mean comments because my body was just doing a thing, you know, oh, well, you can't like Emily, you know, and it's just like, and I remember being like, wow, I literally have no say over this. You know what I mean? And it feels like really bad, like that I'm being, you know, targeted almost because, but it really, it's a reflection. It's these layers underneath of like how these other moms are feeling. And I think at the end of the day, we all are feeling insecure.
For sure.
Always. Like no matter like how confidently that you come across, I think in the back of every single parent's head is like, oh my God, am I fucking my kid up? Right. You know? And you have to come to peace with that in one way or another, you know?
Well, I think moving into that is an important like next shift, I think, because like in this conversation, because you kind of started out talking a little bit about how you were parented and how maybe it wasn't how you want to parent. And so how do you do that? And what does that look like? And how is that, I don't know, not a criticism of how you were parented?
That's a tricky one. Like, how do I choose to parent differently and have it not be a direct criticism to how I was parented? And I don't know. I think that because I
think this is happening like generationally, personally.
It really is.
There's a huge, I mean, that's like what that show with Jada Pinkett Smith and her daughter and her mom.
The
Red Table Talk.
Yes.
I've only seen snippets. I've never sat down and watched it, but the snippets I've seen have been like absolute gold because it's a grandma, a mom, and a daughter. So it's like 3 generations and they're openly talking about how like the grandma was like, like parented in a way that like Jada didn't parent, and then the daughter obviously has her own thoughts. And I just think that to a big piece is that we're just like evolving as a species. And like we have new languaging around how to parent that like just like did
understanding,
not exist.
Even scientific understanding of like the importance of skin on skin contact for infants.
Right.
Like these like very like scientific thing that we just like didn't have the information. Like our parents didn't even have that information, you know?
Like our parents were parenting with like how their parents parented, which is like
old school.
Kind of, yeah, we all just like flinched because like so cringy because it's just like never talking about emotions. Like, just like, I feel like they had like no role models, really, our parents. Like, you know what I mean? Like with their parents, because their parents, like, I mean, again, I'm being super cliche here and like talking about stereotypes, but like that generation just like didn't talk about their emotions, like, period. So I just feel like our parents were literally going off intuition and like, what? I don't know. Like,
shooting in the dark, for
literally
sure.
shooting in the dark.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. And the thing is they weren't not talking about their emotions because they were bad people. Like, there's a whole generation that they couldn't afford to do that because they were at war. Like, literally, it was just like, it's like
survival. Like when you're surviving
of needs, you can't afford to be talking about your feelings, you know? And so that's why the whole like snowflake term is real, because older generations are perceiving younger generations who are talking about their feelings as like big babies. And that makes sense. They're seeing us that way because they were not allowed to be that way, because they had to be strong. They had to shove it all down because they had to survive. But today, we can afford to spend time exploring our consciousness and our feelings and our traumas and our experiences and how that affects our reality. And that has nothing to do with how strong we are. And it has everything to do with the fact that, honestly, it's thanks to them. Those older generations. Say that. They've built a foundation for us to be allowed to do this. And what's going to come out of this exploration is like beautiful fucking things, solutions to problems, beautiful art, like abundance. Like, that's what comes out of, it's the hierarchy of needs. We're getting closer to the top.
Connection. When you can understand your own self and what you're feeling, you're going to have healthier relationships, all of it. And I just hope for a better world, right? We're going to raise kids that we're going to have a better world. Like, totally. Because, I mean, it's so important, the acknowledgement of, you know, your emotions. That was definitely one thing that I knew right off the bat with my kids. I'm like, you're going to be able to tell me what you're feeling. And they do. My 3-year-old, he's like, I'm frustrated, mama. And I'm like, it's okay. That's totally okay to feel frustrated. Or he'll say like, I need to go cry a little bit because I'm feeling sad. And I'm like, yep. Go cry. Like, I cry all the time, and that's totally okay. And like validating them in their own emotions is literally a 3-year-old, like how important that is. And I just like shooting for the stars for him, you know, and all of my kids, like, for sure. I want them to be like able to like find healing and find happiness. And I think that's all any parent really wants.
That's all we want. Yeah.
I don't care about the crazy career. I don't care about any of it. I just want them to be happy at the end of the day and feel like they can go to sleep without like the anxiety that we all feel all the time because we're working through like healings, and you know, doesn't mean that they won't, but giving them tools to have the things to like work through their things. And
I also feel like I see a pattern in like, because of all of this work, and we just are like, there's more conversations around like inherent worth and value. And I think that's also important because I think there's also a shift of, I don't know, a lot of moms were like just so like self-sacrificing, and that was like their identity,
negative,
and all they were. And there's a lot of like shift and like pushing back against that, so that, you know, you're also a human and deserve to be like loved and cared for as who you are, like independent of being a mom. You know what I mean? And I love that conversation. I think that's also a big generational shift. Like, I think that makes sense that like, especially in like digging into this and seeing these shifts, like if that's your identity, like that's a really like scary thing to put like your entire like who I am, what I'm worth on like being a mom. Do you know what I mean? Like for that to be like everything.
You actually have very little control of the outcome. I mean, you like have a big say in it, but ultimately this is like a human that's going to do their own thing. And if your sense of self-worth is riding on another human, that's never good in any situation. It's, even if it's your
codependency,
kid.
isn't it? It's like literally the definition of codependency.
That is it. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting thought. Like moms being codependent on their kids. That's like, that happens all the time. I mean, that you're touching on something that was very specific, because I remember mom telling us a story about how she used to paint, and because she went to college for art, and she used to have her paintings. I have a few of her paintings hanging up in my house, or my apartment. And I remember hearing this as like a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and being like, why did you stop? And she was like, I got married and I had kids and I don't have time for it now. Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling sad and guilty. Like, it's my fault that you're not doing this thing that was so important to you, that you were good at. Your art was in galleries and you were good at it. And I was so sad. And I remember even back then thinking, like, having thoughts about like how I think it's important to maintain, to value the things that bring you joy, even when you have kids, that those are not things to sacrifice. And I think it's been glorified in the past, a mother sacrificing everything for her children, but ultimately that leads to her own like suffering, because she's not caring for herself and nurturing the things that enriching her. Yeah. And so for me, I remember that was a very conscious choice in my parenting, that I wanted my girls to be able to witness me doing things that bring me joy. And it was hard because there were times that my kids would cry because I was leaving to go to my studio, or I had like a thing that I was going to go do and they were like mad at me for leaving. But like today, now that they're older, they seeing them like I took them to this, there's a store in Asheville that has some of my jewelry displayed there for sale. And I brought the girls there on opening night of the store, and seeing them march right up to like my display with all this pride on like, and being like, Mom, you did such a good job. And like telling them that they love it. I was just like, this is what it is, because I'm showing my girls that, by me valuing things that bring me joy, it enriches our life entirely. And what I'm teaching them is like, they can do the same. Like they can reach for big things and do big things, even if it's hard and even if they don't have a lot of time. And I think that is like, it's like, it is so important. Even going back to touch on what you were saying, Kay, about how fatigued and run ragged women are. It's like, what are the things that we do that fills our cup back up? You know what I mean? And the things that and gosh, I know Kayla, like I'm looking at Kayla being like, she's like, fuck off. But, because like, here's the thing, Kay, my kids are 8 and 10. Okay. I only just got there in these last 2 years. And so there's hope. There's hope, Kayla. You have toddlers. Toddlers, I think, what is self-care like when you have toddlers? It's like sleeping more than 6 hours straight. Like
in a row.
Yeah.
Sleeping for 6 hours, taking an uninterrupted shower.
Oh, that's
going
a good
to the
one.
bathroom.
Going to the bathroom interrupted is huge. That honestly, that still like lingers. I still don't get to do that often.
Wait, I need to hear more about this. Like the little things that you're just like, this is gold. Like the things that I'm taking for granted probably right now.
Well, having nobody touching you.
Yeah, that actually happened the other day.
Like having a personal space.
My kids were just like hugging me, and it was after like a long day of work, and I felt dirty because I haven't showered yet. And, after doing what I do, I just like really need to just take a shower. And I was telling my husband, I'm like, I can't have them touching me right now. Like I literally feel like I'm going to like have a panic attack because they just are hugging me. And I love them and I want to hug them, but I also just like want to take a shower. And I need like, so my routine usually is like, I have to get home, say hi, run upstairs, start feeling like a bathtub. And then I just like shuffle around my bedroom by myself.
Yeah.
For like a solid like 15 minutes to like decompress before.
Dude, that makes so much sense.
And then I can come down and I'm like, oh, I feel better. That's what I say. I feel better. Now let's have our evening.
And I think this is the thing about conscious parenting is that's what you need.
That's what I need.
As opposed to being unaware and not knowing that you need this little buffer window to shift from work to home and be able to ask your partner to support you in that. And because like, what is the alternative? You yelling at your kids or you getting frustrated with them. Yeah. And so I think that's like the whole thing. But yeah, the personal space bubble, like, okay, the only thing I can relate it to is, have you ever been like petting a cat too much or being too rough with a cat and then it freaks out and starts like scratching you, like when it gets overstimulated. I mean, I grew up having cats, so like I have literally scars on my body from that. But that's like what it's like as a mom. I feel like you get literally physically overstimulated, and you feel like I remember feeling like I was going to have a panic attack because I was like, I just need somebody not to be touching my body right now. It's wild. It's like a lot.
And then I want my own food. Nobody's
allowed to eat your food
off of my plate.
That's hilarious.
I've never had that. Since I've had kids, I've never had that.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, this is bringing up for me because I've heard Emily, I don't know if this like anything comes up for you, but I've heard Emily share stories about moments when she's parenting where she got triggered and then a big realization about herself came out of it. I don't know if you want to share any of those or.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe I can, and if anything sparks in your mind, Kay, but there was the one.
Yeah.
What one?
Which one are you going to tell? I was going to say the costume one.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to say.
Okay, good. I think it's a good one.
Up.
Okay.
Yeah, I've told this story. I feel like maybe I've probably talked to you about this, but there was, in a quick rundown, it was like Halloween costume day at school, and Evie, I had bought both Evie and Lila we like went to the Halloween tent and they picked out a fancy costume. I spent like $50 each on these costumes because I was just like, this is going to be fun. And it was like going all out on the costumes. Anyway, Halloween day comes around at school and Evie doesn't want to wear her costume. And I was like frustrated. I was like, Evie, I bought you this costume for you to wear today. Like, this is why I bought it for you. And she was like adamant, like she didn't want to wear it and she wanted to wear something else. And I was like pushing the issue, and then she's crying and I'm crying. Mm-hmm. We're crying and it's before school. Mm-hmm. And I remember I just was like, I need a timeout. I was like, we're just going to be late for school and it's fine. And I went and I had a timeout. And when I put myself in timeout, I had this huge realization that this had nothing to do with Evie and everything to do with me. Mm-hmm. Because my little inner Emily, my little, 7-year-old Emily was like, I never got, my mom never bought me a fancy Halloween costume to wear. How dare you, mm-hmm. Evie? Mm-hmm. Like, your mom is buying you this fancy costume and you have the audacity to not want to wear it. And I was just like, it is my little inner Emily who longed to feel special and longed for attention from my mom that was upset at Evie. But Evie, who has her own body and gets to choose what she wants to put on her body and has every right to that. And if this costume's not feeling right for her today, that is perfectly fine. And so I came out of my bedroom a completely different person, right? Transformed. And, and I walked up to Evie and I apologized. And I actually explained to her, I was like, I think that there's a little part of me that really wished that I could go costume shopping with my mom. And I think that part of me got a little upset. And I'm sorry about that. But you get to wear whatever you want to wear and whatever makes you happy. But it was like talking about how parenting can be healing, realizing, wow, I was causing my daughter to cry and be so upset. And I almost forced her to wear something she didn't want to wear to school, which tells her she's not in charge of her body, all because I had a little desire and I had a little unmet need in little Emily that went unmet, and that I never even really knew about until that moment, and making those connections. Yeah. And it's like, and that's what I do. I just like try when something's really triggering for me that my kids are doing, I stop, I try to have that time out and I try to ask myself, what is this? What's the story that's coming up for me? What's my own unmet need? Because when I can recognize my own pain, then I can, soothe myself and then really see my kid and see what their needs are.
I know having toddlers, I feel like you're just triggered all the time with everything they do because they want their sandwich cut one way, but you cut it the other way, but then they wanted it the other way. And they wanted the pink fork, but you gave them the yellow fork. So you give them the pink fork, but then they wanted the yellow fork. Yeah. Like literally that's what it is all the time. And I feel like, there are some moments where I do have to like just say, I need to step out because I'm so triggered. But then at the same token, I don't do timeouts with my kids. So I feel like I want to teach them how I process these things. So now I do it there and with them. And I say, we're all going to take a deep breath. And everyone does. in and out. We're all going to take a deep breath. And then we all tap our forehead. And I'm like, we're going to figure this one out. Let's figure out this tricky thing. And we figure it out. Like whatever it is that we're feeling upset about or anxious about or miscommunication. Because with the toddlers, they can't communicate well. So trying to like figure out what they're saying in their little baby language is tricky. And then I'm like, let's do this together. Mommy loves you so much. We're going to figure this out together. And then it's always been fine.
Yeah.
So it's only been 3 years into this, but it's always been fine. And I think a lot of times, like, we work them up even more with just our own brain of things, that trying to like hone it back down to like, what is actually the issue that we're dealing with? It's the fork color. So let's figure out what fork color you want. Show me. And so then, we figure it out together. And yes, it takes 15 minutes when it should have just been, you need to,
Yeah. Just deal with it.
A lot of people are like, you just need to listen and you need to have that fork.
Yeah. I definitely
They're their own little human.
I know.
And they're their own little person. And they have a right to having choices. Like I totally believe that for my kids. And I want them to feel empowered to have their own choices. And
do you feel like for you, cause I mean, we were raised together. Do you feel like that maybe that's a reflection of how you felt, like, because that's a value of yours, that your kids have autonomous power. And do you think it's a reflection of like you experiencing a lack of that when you were a kid?
I think so, because I feel like, I look back on a lot of my childhood of like, all I wanted to do was be a zoologist. And so we weren't doing like, a lot of my childhood things weren't centered around that, when I was very like, that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't get to do that until I was, ready for college. Even down to like ballet classes. That's all I wanted was to take ballet classes. And I had to do gymnastics, which I like hated. I hated gymnastics. My arms were always broken as kids. So like
your arms were always broken.
It hurts my arms to do like cartwheels and stuff. Like it's not what I wanted to do.
My arms were always broken.
They were. She had broken arms for like 3 years in a row.
Wait, what? Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, just because we were crazy and I kept trying to fly and all the things.
And I kept getting in trouble for you breaking your arm.
Yeah, but it was Allison and I like usually doing it together.
I know.
That's hilarious.
But I do
I'm sorry
think
about your broken
like,
arms.
I deal with it now. It's fine. Sometimes I wear a brace. But things like that where I just feel like I want my children to be seen as humans because they are. And I'm not just going to be telling them what to do all the time. Like they're their own little people that have their own feelings and their own thoughts and their own interests. And I want to be like present in that and be very like aware of like, okay, Max, if you want to do baseball, great. Well, if you want to do dancing, yeah, let's do it. Like, and I may not be able to do everything that they want to do because, but, that is really important to me that they are also able to say what they need and be able to communicate that, because I can't even do that. I can't even, at the end of some days, I'm like, I wasn't able to say what I needed either in my workplace or in my marriage or whatever. And I want them to be able to be good communicators and know what they want and do that. And that doesn't make them, snowflakes. That doesn't make them, that makes them empowered little humans that are going to hopefully grow into people who can ask for what they need and not settle.
Yeah. That's so
the yellow
huge.
fork. Yeah. He wants the pink fork.
Yes.
So
I love that perspective. Yeah.
It's so funny because it is like, I think that's a big, again, generational difference between like now and like our parents' generation, is it was just so much more like authoritative and like, so I remember being little and just being like, I cannot wait to be an adult. Like being a kid sucks. Like I remember thinking that because I just felt like I had not a lot of say over like my life. And so in the areas that I did, it's like memorable. Like my mom always let me choose what I could wear. And so there are pictures of me as a little kid where I'm like wearing like actual like costumes, like not on Halloween, but I'm wearing like a costume with my white cowgirl boots. That was like my jam. And I remember that being like one of my favorite things was like picking out my clothes because it was like an area in my life that I had say over. You know what I mean? Because like you don't have a lot of say over like where you're going. There's 4 of us. So we're all going together to drop someone off at like dance class, right? Like you don't have a say. Sit in the car. We're all going. And like, so that's just kind of like your life as a kid. And it's just so interesting to hear you talk about like the little things like the fork because it feels so, I'm sure it's so frustrating where you're just like, pick up like a fork.
Yeah.
Like, here's
fork.
both. Like you get them all the forks. Like I just imagine myself being like, here's 20 forks. Pick which one you want. They're all yours.
Honestly, the whole like you pick, like I getting to the point where I'm like, you choose. I'm getting so close to my girls like packing their own lunches. Like Evie can do it, but I cannot wait because I always get the Mom, I didn't like the thing. I didn't remember like constantly. And I'm just like, there's going to be a day that comes that I'm going to give you my card and drop you off at the grocery store and tell you to pick out your own food and pack whatever you like. I'm like, I'll have some guidelines, but then you just pack it and I just like don't even, it's like, I can't like you get there, but it's true. Like creating space for your kids to be autonomous and independent and asserting their, and the thing is what we do because we have as adults, we have a completely different sense of what's important and what's not. For a kid, that fork might be the most really important thing that has ever happened to them is the getting the right color fork. But we use our adult brains to quantify that doesn't mean shit when it does mean a lot to this kid, you know, and to remember I know the fork doesn't mean much to me right now, but what if it was like I was picking out a car and somebody was giving me the yellow car and I really wanted the pink car, you know? Like that would be different. I would be upset about that. But I do have this like thought that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about, Kay and Sarah, is for me this was like a huge moment in finding more peace around being a mom and specifically around the mom guilt. You know, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but it's this idea of the fact that, you know, we kind of are handed this default belief system that like God put us here in this body, right? Like God put you in that family, in that body. He didn't ask you. It's not consensual. He just like put you there. And I like had this big moment where I just decided like, I don't know if I want to subscribe to that. We can't prove that that's true. So maybe I'll pick something that feels better. And to me, the idea of that we consented to reality, like our souls somewhere consented to be in these bodies with the families in the places, to me feels so much more empowering than some deity doing that for me. And so when applied to our children, that way of thinking was really transformational for me, because when I was coming from a point of like, oh my God, like God entrusted this little soul to me and I better not fuck it up, was so much pressure. I was breaking under that because I'm not perfect. I am going to make mistakes. I am going to let my daughters down. Like it's definitely going to happen and has happened. But the thought that my daughters chose me because they needed to experience life with me as their mom. Like I could like boo-hoo thinking about it just right now. Like that feels so much more in alignment with like what I believe like reality to be. And that gives me a sense of like trust in myself. Like I can trust that even though like I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to do things wrong for whatever reason, my girls needed to experience life this lifetime with me as their mom. And then that applies to us. Like for whatever reason, I needed to experience life with my mom and my dad and you as my sister. And like, this is part of what the journey my soul is going on. And I found so much peace there as a mom and trusting my kids, trusting that my girls' little souls know what they're doing. Like they knew what they were doing when they picked me to be their mom. And I can trust them too. And I can trust me. And it's kind of like this, breath, like let go of all that weight and that pressure. And I can just be with them, you know?
But then like allowing ourselves to not be perfect.
is
and
huge.
I think like acknowledging that with our kids, like the amount of times I do say like, mommy, like really, I wasn't the best today.
And I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And it had nothing to do with you. It was all my own behavior, and owning it. And
like, could you imagine if our
but
mom
allowing
said that to like,
you know,
no,
like
I just
again to do that.
That's like, again, that whole shift that's happening between being like the authoritative parent and the like human parent, like
empathetic, conscious
just
parent.
being like, because I think that without that, like when I hear you both doing that with your kids, and I'm like, wow, that's so like radically different than anything I've ever like seen. And again, I think that's how most people in our generation feel about like their parents. But it's just, because I remember actually like being like 20 and being like, oh wow, my parents are like just like messy humans. Like, why did that, like, it just like wasn't, because it was like there was like a separation. Like, I'm your parent. My dad used to say, like, he's like, I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm your dad. Like, you're not going to agree with what I say. Like, in a very, like, kind, loving way, right? But there wasn't ever, like, an acknowledgement of, like, hey, I don't fucking know what I'm doing sometimes. Like, that, like, didn't exist. And I had to, like, figure that out myself.
Right.
Oh, and then it's
flying,
and it, like, shatters your reality a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing of, like, when you realize teachers don't, like, live at school. You know, when you're a kid, you're like, wait, what? You don't live here and your entire existence isn't about me? What?
Both of the homeschoolers are sitting here like,
oh, you don't know what that's like? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, wait. I went trick-or-treating once and my teacher opened the door and I was like,
whoa. Oh, I bet that blew your mind. Yeah.
Because I was like in like second grade and I was like, you have a house? You have children?
A life?
Like,
yeah.
Like, you're just like, little brain just like doesn't like understand. And I feel like I had a similar realization to my parents where I was like, wait, what? Like, because there just was never, you know, hey, I don't like it. Because, well, it's like they just, again, that whole generation, like you ask them, like, is there a God? I feel like a lot of times they're like, yes. Or they're not like, this is something that people, there's like questions around. Like, there's just like not that.
Well,
it's like, I have the
generation
answers.
is afraid of the unknown. That whole generation is afraid of the unknown. And I feel like they're afraid to say, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I say I don't know like 100 times a day. Like, I don't know, but let's look it up or let's see if we can find the answer. But we may never know the answer. And that is okay. That doesn't need to give us anxiety. Like, it is okay to not know.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. The weight that was put on our parents' generation and grandparents' generation to know the truth.
Yeah.
To know the truth. I mean, bless all of their hearts. Like, I cannot imagine like living and somewhere deep and down knowing like this is all bullshit. Like, I actually don't know the truth. And the amount of anxiety and then it makes sense that you would just double down on the things because you can't unravel that thread. Because like the whole idea of like, I am going to look at my children and tell them, you know, and I have to be right all the time. I have to be right. I have to, when I make a decision, I have to stand by it. I can't backtrack. I can't change my mind. I can't apologize. Like that is so hard and so exhausting, but they did that because that's what they needed to do. Like, they weren't ready. Like, that generation in our generalizations wasn't ready to say, you know, but a lot of them weren't in a place because they weren't not in a place of like safety and abundance that we are today. They weren't in a place that they could say they didn't know. They needed the security of like an infallible truth to rely on, to give them a sense of safety, a sense of reliance. So it makes sense that they cling to that with everything that they have. And today we have a lot more of abundance, so much more access to information. And we have this like,
and scientific research of what works and what doesn't work.
The growth and evolution. But now we have this ability to say, like, this is a product of our parents, again, like paving the way for us now to be in a place where we can look at our kids and be like, I don't know, let's go on Google and find out. You know what I mean? And to apologize to them, I'm so sorry that what I did was not appropriate and was not wrong. And I'm going to work to do better in the future. And them seeing us as like humans and not these figureheads of truth, you know?
Well, that's also, backing up to what Kayla said about science, like having like just like more information, like the access to information and new ways of parenting and ideas and concepts and scientific studies is like, I mean, that just like did not exist. Like the internet like became a thing in our like lifetime. You know what I mean? It's so wild to like, can you imagine parenting without the internet? Like literally the only information you have
Google
is like
everything. My kid has a weird red spot on her left hand. Like, what is that? Like,
but like
I literally can't imagine.
The only information you would have is how you were parented.
This is huge.
Like,
this is
that's
huge.
it.
Yes.
You don't have any information. So you're parenting with literally no other input other than like what happened to you as a kid.
And the book you could check out at the library, maybe. Like, yeah. Maybe. Like, and so going all the way back to what you were saying earlier is like, how can you change how you parent without it being like a direct criticism of your parents? It's not that. The thing is it's not that at all, even though I feel like a lot of people interpret it that way. What it is it's like, I literally can make better decisions and choices for my kids because I have access to the information. Yeah. And honestly, if my parents had access to the information,
they would do the same thing.
They would have done the same thing. So
and there's going to be our version of this.
100%.
There's going to be
like,
saving up for therapy for our children.
Oh, definitely. Mine are already in therapy, but it's already happening.
Oh, yeah. I think that's great. I think that's how it should be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we're going to have our own version of this. Like we have our own blind spots right now that we have no understanding. And our kids are just going to be like, Mom, what the fuck? Like, and we're going to be like,
I think that the benefit that we have, though, what's going to be different than me telling my parents what the fuck is because I'm not grasping for life on this idea of truth and this idea that I have to know everything and I have to know what's best.
You're open.
I'm going to be able to hear them. Yeah. I'm going to be able to, or I'm hoping to be able to hear my girls when they're like, Mom, this wasn't great for me. And that I'll be able to be there and be like, yeah, I can see that. And I'm so sorry.
And that's also huge because it'll like happen throughout their lives and your life. You know what I mean? It's not like done when they're like out of the house. It's like, it can be like a thing that goes
growing. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's like so. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'd love to hear Kayla talk a little bit about her zoology background and what that's taught you about being a mom.
Yeah.
So yeah, that actually being a zoologist has been like the biggest influence other than Emily in becoming a parent because working with animals is exactly like working with toddlers or babies. So yeah, like working with animals and it always being like, this is what these animals have. They don't go home at the end of the day. They are there and giving them the best life that I can. And they have like an incredible life and like a positive life. I take that in turn and I do the same things with my kids. Like, and you know, my kids are home 24/7 with my husband and that's all they have because they're 2 and 3-year-olds and just making it positive. Like there doesn't need to be negative. Like there really doesn't. Like unless they're running into the road and it's like
life or death.
You need to stop. Yeah. I'm going to tackle you. Like, but those like situations really are like slim. So having it be like switching your mindset to being like, how can this be positive? How can I set them up for success? How do I get like from step to step to step? Because it's like an ever growing journey and building like the trust with your kids. Like building trust is a huge thing and how easily you can break it.
Whoa. Wait, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I definitely in like with like the animals, like there can be times where like trust can just be broken with.
I think I broke trust with my dog because I put a sock on her head.
Well, so that's a good example. Taking your dog to the vet. You're breaking their trust. They don't like it.
And you leave them.
You haven't had enough steps to make it like a positive
picks them up
experience.
And takes them in the back. Yeah.
So you can do it a different way where it's a slow process of desensitizing them to vets and vet hospitals and making it really positive with treats, slowly easing in. No one does that. You take them to the vet, you drop them off, and that's what it is.
Like, nobody has time.
You're like, what?
Yeah. Right. And a lot of people don't think about that as, with pets. I think about that all the time with the animals I care for, because it is like it's a whole thing. And it's the same with the kids.
Yeah. So like dropping them off at
dropping them off at daycare and leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they all scream.
And they're terrified. Yeah. They don't like it. And, what's also interesting is the field I'm in, it's always been, you can't be anthropomorphic, which is putting human emotions onto animals. And that's what I was taught through college, which animals have human emotions. So they just do. And, so having kids has been like a huge thing because they are having human emotions. And so seeing things and just like trying to like block it off, like, well, this is just what you need to do. Because this is just what we do,
So, what's interesting? This is triggering this thought that I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on it. But this idea, okay. So this whole idea of being what is it? Anthropomorphic. Ooh, new word. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like in the sense of transferring adult emotions onto children, which I feel like,
big
right?
Thing.
And so when your kid is like throwing a fit and you're transferring your adult emotion to being like, this kid is being an asshole and is trying to make life hard on me.
And they're not.
They're just hungry or they need to go potty or something like that. And that, I remember that's like a huge thing for me was realizing and reinforcing it to the people around me that like my children, like, their intent is not what your intent would be if you did the same thing. Like my kid throwing a fit in the grocery store isn't because she's bad or she's like anything like that. It's because she has a very valid reason for why she's doing that. But I think so often in like parenting, we can easily, because it's easy to do. You just automatic.
Manipulation is a common one.
That like my kid is manipulating. Yeah.
A situation when they're like 3 and you're like, I don't think that they like are capable
know how to do that. They're still in like theta brainwaves. Like they're
they don't
still
know how to
practically
do that
asleep.
Well, and I think it's a power struggle that a lot of parents have too, and like an ego thing. Like you just need to listen and you need to do what I'm asking you to do. And
but also being tired, no? What do you do when you're tired and you're like, I don't have time? We literally do not physically have time for you to look through all the forks.
Yeah, when I'm tired, that's a good point because it's like not always can I have that endless patience.
Like what do you do? You're like,
when I'm
sometimes I feel like it's got to be, sorry, this is just what's happening right now. I feel like,
For me, definitely. For me,
Kayla's like,
I don't know.
No.
I don't.
Kayla always, she has an endless well of patience.
I have an endless well of patience.
If I get there, what I do is I look at my girls and I say, but honestly, Kayla, now that I'm thinking about it, I've only been able to do this since they've been older.
Yeah, you can't
like I think when they're toddlers, you can't. You have to lock yourself in your room and hope that they don't kill themselves. I don't know. But like with my girls now that they're older, if I feel like I'm getting to like a threshold of like patience or I'm getting really frazzled, I can look at them and I can say, hey, girls, I'm noticing I'm really, really exhausted, or I have like a really bad headache, or whatever the thing is. And what I need tonight is like kind of like peace and quiet. And I might need to go like have like a little rest in my room or something like that. And they're like supportive of that. And then they support me, but I was able to identify my needs and my emotions and communicate it to them. You can't do that yet with toddlers.
Sometimes you can find compromises though. I think one of the biggest things too, if there's things where it's just like, no, we can't go to the toy store at 8:00 at night. Like we can't do that. You switch it to a yes. That's always, and that's the positive reinforcement. You can say the no, but with their little minds, if you ended it there, like no,
it's tragedy.
It's tragedy, and it's devastating for them. But then you're not giving them direction of what you can do next. So
redirect that energy.
No, we can't. But let's pull out your train set and play the trains for a little bit.
Yeah,
and then that always works. It always works. And then it's like, we'll go to the toy store later. maybe next week or whatever, tomorrow, or, it's not no forever. It's just not right now. But let's switch it to a yes.
Not right
let's
now
do
is a good phrase. And Kayla, you're so good at this whole idea of like making things playful, like especially for young kids. It really just like, that's all anybody ever wants. We don't want it to be serious all the time. We want to play. I think that's a very natural, inherent thing. And to make something that could otherwise be a huge struggle and turn it into play. Like you were just telling me about like your bedtime routine, which is just like notoriously a massive struggle as parents, you know?
We actually our bedtime routine has always been really good. Now with my work schedule has switched, so I don't get home until like 6:15. Kids go to bed around like 8:30. So for me, I feel like I do this more for me as
to get
having
quality,
having quality time. But our bedtime is like magical because our kids right now are in like imagination, imaginative
thinking,
play, and so I create like a story for them that we travel through, and I see like their mind just like thinking about all of the magical things that we're talking about. And I say, we're going to go on an adventure. Maxwell's going to be the captain and Walt's going to be usually he wants to be the octopus.
Nice.
Walt's the octopus. And we've got to travel upstairs and get to our magical ship. So let's go. And they're like, yeah. But I'm like, first you need your supplies. Let's get our supplies. And they get all their levies that they need for bedtime. And we go up to Emily's bed, which is Emily's bed when she comes to visit. That's the ship. And we're in the ship, and then we pretend we're sailing in the ship. And then in order for us to get to the next step, we got to brush our teeth. Let's go brush your teeth. They run into the bathroom to brush their teeth and go pee-pee on the body and all the things. And now we need to go to sleep. So we're ready for the adventure in the morning. And it's really, it only takes like 10 minutes. Like it's a 10-minute magical nighttime.
And it's
both
that
of them
active positive, right?
To go to bed. And it's active positive because that's what we want for our kids.
And it feels good.
And it feels good. And they sleep good. And we wake up and have a magical morning.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much.
Fun.
That's so amazing.
I think that there is this feeling when you're tired and grumpy that you like want to be tired and grumpy, like, and you want it to come across that you're tired and grumpy. But when you like just switch, you just change.
You'll feel better.
You feel better.
You'll feel better.
When you're just like, I do this, like most mornings, I kind of wake up tired and grumpy. It's just kind of like how it is a lot of times these days. It's seasonal depression. It's just how it is. But I'll wake up and I'm like, and I'll just decide, I'm going to have an awesome fucking day. And I've decided that I'm going to be the girls' like hype man, and I'm going to like cheer for them as they get out of bed, and we're going to like have a great fucking morning. And I feel better and they feel better. Everything goes smoothly. And then all of a sudden we're at school early. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
We got to school early. This is like crazy. Right. But it is just like consciously, right? Making the choice of like, it's one of those things that if you just can kind of get the ball rolling on that energy and that excitement and joy and creativity and play, it just then everybody's laughing and having a great time.
Yeah, that's where the kids thrive, is in that energy.
That's so fun.
That's where we thrive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been so fun being a parent and being able to, like, this morning we woke up and we had a tea party, and I was like, this is the best thing.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. Like, it really is, when you can not think about finances, not think about all, gotta clean the house, gotta do this, gotta get the laundry done, and just like be present for your kids. And someday you will have a clean house, but
right now it's messy, and
right
you got
now,
two little toddlers.
Fun.
Yeah.
Right? Let's just have
I love
fun.
that. I love that so much. Well, Kayla, this was so good.
I feel like we could go forever, honestly.
We could talk about this forever. Maybe we'll have like another second one when I come up to Buffalo next. But thank you so much for like coming on the podcast and talking. I feel like we touched on so many good like nuggets of
definitely
what conscious parenting is about, and how that's like an ever learning process of mistakes, admitting your mistakes, and showing that you can grow and change and do better the next day, right?
Yeah. And I really just do believe that we're all like evolving. It's just all an evolution. Yeah, I love it. I love hearing you guys talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, this is so fun. I love you two so much. Two of like my most favorite people in the entire world.
And what a way to meet you. Just like diving right into how you parent.
All the things.
Yeah. I love it. On brand.
Till next time.
Until next time.